Hello everybody, welcome to episode 8 of The Mayor and I, with I being me, Lindsay Khan, and the Mayor, potential Mayor of Greater Manchester, Nick Buckley, MBE. And in this podcast we discuss a number of items that are of interest to me, but I don't really prepare Nick for them and see how he goes with it. So episode 8, vote for Nick Buckley for Mayor of Greater Manchester, please everybody, if you watch this video, and even if you don't watch this video, if that makes sense. Yeah. So Nick, you and I, in these previous episodes, we've covered a kind of current affairs, and I've said let's stick to stuff in the UK, and we've tried to do that as best we can, but on a couple of occasions we've touched on subjects that I actually think quite a lot about, or I have thought a lot about, and those subjects are, in no particular order, the trans activist movement and the trans issues that the world is facing at the moment and the UK is facing. We've talked about capital punishment and we've talked about abortion, and today I'd like to maybe explore one of those a little bit more, which is the whole kind of trans thing which is happening at the moment. And I intended to do that anyway, but incidentally during the week I've seen a number of things, including an interview with Graham Linehan, who I think you may know him, and
I know who he is. I've not met him.
I thought you might have interviewed him at some point.
No.
in your and I'll come back to that.
Our friend Barry has.
Oh, Barry has, yeah. So Barry, we have a good friend, Barry Wall, who is very, I mean, I won't say he's down the rabbit hole on this one, but he is consumed with what is happening in that area of society and the whole ideology around that. And I know Barry, I think he's interacted with J.K. Rowling, interacted with Graham Linehan and all these characters. And I did see this interview with Graham Linehan on New Culture Forum, I think it's called it, which is that programme. And it was very interesting just listening to him and his views about where we are at the moment. But he said something in the middle of that, which I'd like to ask you as a question and see if you think this is correct. So what he said is he believes that the trans movement, the trans activists, and the whole trans ideology that's sprung up is a result of middle class privilege. And what are your views on that? Do you think that's the case?
It's partly true, but it's a little bit too simplistic. Trans is more complicated than that. So trans is basically an umbrella term for lots and lots of different issues that we all just call trans now. So where he's right would be middle class girls at school all thinking they're trans and wanting to transition. That's a middle class problem. That's them trying to fit in and not having real world problems, so having to find other problems instead. They're the same sort of girls who would be trying to commit suicide or would be self-harming, or 20 years ago would have been goths. So we're all trying to fit in, we're all looking for problems. And looking for problems isn't a bad thing. That's what keeps you alive. That's what keeps a saber-toothed tiger from getting you. It's always looking what could go wrong and always being aware of it. But when there's nothing serious to go wrong, we start looking at the minutiae of problems and looking for stuff, because we have to have something going wrong to keep us alert.
Yeah, an artificial threat, or
exactly.
It's a form of threat,
yeah. So that's one point. But then within trans, we've also got perverted men who are not necessarily middle class. They're just, I'm going to say all men are perverts, but to some extent. But
don't let everybody know what's... That's the secret between us men.
But some men have always been perverted, and it's now become acceptable to put a miniskirt on, red lipstick and high heels and go around calling yourself Dorothy and going in women's changing rooms and masturbating and filming it and putting it online. And now we call those people trans, and they're nothing like and nothing to do with those girls I just talked about. So this is how confusing trans gets. And then we're looking at male sports cheats who call themselves Dorothy because they're inadequate to win championships as a male, so therefore will cheat and pretend to be a woman to compete against women and beat them. There's always been sports cheats. From the very first time someone invented a sport, a certain percentage of people have found ways to cheat to win. Because some people would rather cheat and win than do their best and lose. It's all about the winning. They don't care if they've cheated. They don't care if they've ruined someone else on the way. It's all about them winning. Some champions, it's about them being the best they can be. So a good one will be Ronaldo. Ronaldo has trained all his life and has pushed himself to the limit. He's in his mid-30s now.
He's actually 39 now.
Well,
yeah, he's nearly 40.
Yeah,
it's hard to believe to look at him that he's nearly 40.
Exactly, pushing himself to the limit every day, training. Even he's a multi-millionaire. Doesn't have to do anything, but he's pushing himself all the time to be the best. He's the complete opposite of the people who would cheat to be the best. He couldn't live with himself if he thought he was cheating, because he's not that type of person. I've never met the man. So it covers a lot of things, but lots of our issues at the moment in society are middle class issues. The green agenda, all these things are basically a middle class issue.
And I think the middle class privilege thing that Graham Linehan was referring to was the fact that some middle class parents see it as a badge of honour to have a trans child, basically.
Oh yeah.
They believe by having a trans child, and I'm paraphrasing what Graham Linehan was saying, is that they will then get special attention, not just for themselves, but for their child as well. That their child will get the attention at school that they deserve because they're a special child. And so they encourage this trans behaviour it is a lot in girls, but it's also in boys as well, in order to feel special, to feel that they can talk to people and they can parade their trans child around. I think that's the point he was trying to make.
That's a good point, and that's another section under the umbrella of trans. So there's no such thing as a trans child, only mentally ill parents.
Yes.
So we have those parents who are basically suffering from Munchausen by proxy. So they're quite willing to damage their child for the social status and attention they gain through doing that. And the reason why this is a middle class issue is because there's no brownie points now being white and being middle class. If anything,
that's a really good
you'll
point.
look down upon even more. So you used to be able to go, my son's gay. That doesn't get you any points these days either, being gay. And you're not black, so you can't claim any slavery points. You're not a different religion. You can't claim any of these other hierarchy of points that you can if you're something else. So the only thing they can cling to at the moment would be trans. And my 3-year-old boy picked up a Barbie the other day. He's obviously a girl now, so therefore I'm going to put dresses on him, tell all my friends to call him Sheila, and suddenly I'm the centre of attention. I'm an amazing parent because I've got a trans child. I'm raising my boy as a girl. I'm a better parent than you. Other people will be looking at me and talking about me. I'm special. I've always known I was special. I just couldn't produce anything that was special enough for people to talk about me. But now I can mentally damage my child and be special. And for people who are thinking parents could never do that, and there's not enough mentally ill parents to do this, Nick's wrong on this. Let me refer you to what the Aztecs did with their children. Parents were quite happy offering their children as sacrifices to have their beating hearts ripped out of their chest. So if we can do that in one culture, then we're quite...
It's a small step.
This is a small step saying...
Yeah, to have your child's breasts cut off, to have your child's penis removed and a vaginoplasty and all those horrific things which are done to relatively young children.
Yeah.
Although I think Graham Linehan was saying that he thinks in the UK they've broken the back of that child, effectively what he regards as child abuse, and I agree with him, basically.
We have with the medical procedures.
Yes.
We've brought the back out of that for the moment.
Yeah.
Labour's getting into power soon, so we don't know.
Yes.
So we brought the back out of that. if you want to understand this more, read up on Munchausen by proxy.
Yes.
You know what that is?
I know it is, yeah.
So for people who don't know, Munchausen by proxy is when a parent purposely injures their child, usually through poison, usually through neglect, and they gain attention by taking those children to doctors and hospitals and them not being able to figure out what's wrong, and then they're being treated as the mother of a sick child, and they're getting sympathy, and they're playing on that all the time. Nearly always mothers can lead to the death of children, and so if they can do that, then trans is just extremely similar.
What do you think is going through? Have you heard of Leah Thomas?
Yeah,
Leah Thomas is
swimmer.
the American swimmer.
Yeah.
A man.
Yeah.
Who has pretended to be a woman.
Yeah.
And hasn't had any surgery, by the way, so has a working male genitals. He's well over 6 foot tall, and he competed in a number of races against female, I think it was college athletes.
Yes, college. He broke lots of records and everything.
Broke lots of records. Now, to look at him ostensibly, he's just a normal young man. Obviously, he was a mediocre male swimmer when he competed. Obviously, broke all those records. What do you think is going through his mind when he's doing this? Because he must know he doesn't look like a woman. He must know he's cheating. He must know what, and he must understand. I'm sure he will be getting validation from some people, but that is quite a grotesque manifestation of this ideology and this kind of this behaviour of these people. What is going through his mind, do you think?
So he's completely different in that umbrella of who's under that. He has convinced himself this is the way to win, and once he made that decision, he started convincing himself it was true. So there's a very good chance he thinks he is trans, but he started as a cheat.
Yeah.
If you look at the American cyclist who had cancer.
Oh yeah, oh gosh, yeah. I can't remember his name, but I know who you mean. Yeah.
Won Tour de France 7 times.
Correct.
On the trot.
Yeah.
Lance Armstrong.
Who was, by the way, a phenomenal athlete anyway, even before he started cheating. Yeah.
He knew what he was doing was wrong.
Yeah.
It's ruined his career.
Yeah.
And when the BBC interviewed him a couple of years ago and discussed this with him, the interviewer at the end threw a question at him at the end and said, if this was 1988, would you do it all again? Meaning cheating. And he went, probably.
Yeah.
So those certain percentage of athletes will take the chance of getting caught just to have their moment of fame.
Yeah.
Because the life of an athlete is a very short life. It's only a few years to be at the very top of anything you do. And to give up, and they've given up normally most of their youth by training, and even when you don't become that successful, you still spend all your life training for it. And eventually the weak-minded people go, I'll cheat. And I will cheat, and I will convince myself it's not really cheating. It's not really cheating to take drugs because I wasn't feeling well, and those people have got more testosterone than me, and that person's got longer. So is it really cheating me taking performance-enhancing drugs? Is it really cheating? No, it's not.
And other people are cheating, by the way, as
well. Yeah, everyone else is doing it, so surely I'm going to win.
And I think that's what Lance Armstrong said. He said everybody else was doing it, but I did it best.
Yeah, well, they were doing it because he was selling them all the drugs. Because he was the ringleader of that.
I think he had a doctor who was supplying a lot of drugs.
Yeah.
But this is quite interesting now, because I think this is something my wife said when she said, what is trans? Because this word trans is used, but it is a whole range of things. And I think you've hit on something very interesting here, because Leah Thomas, what you're saying is Leah Thomas actually probably isn't trans. What Leah Thomas is somebody who wants to win.
Yeah, it's a cheat.
And they are using a methodology, as Lance Armstrong did, to win. So you almost say, here's a separate category.
Yeah. Yes.
So yes, here's trans, but actually this guy here isn't trans, because this guy here, or this guy, his manifestation of trans is he wants to win at sports.
Yeah.
So he's pretending to be a woman in order to win at sports. So,
and for people who say there's no way an athlete would do that,
oh, that's nonsense. I mean, everybody knows that.
There's huge cheating in the Paralympics.
Yeah.
Which I found it hard to believe when I first started researching this. I forgot what the term's called now, but if you are in a wheelchair and you've got spinal damage, you can't feel your legs. So they do they're in quite a lot of the Paralympics. And what some of them do is just before the race, they break a toe bone by themselves, because even though they can't feel the pain, their body goes into shock, releases adrenaline and all that stuff, and suddenly they're more pumped. I forgot what the term's called, but they break their own bones. It's cheating.
Yeah.
Or they will have
they have an adrenaline rush.
something strapped to the leg, like a
generate pain.
Like they can twist or cut the leg and stuff like that, because it will generate all that adrenaline, because the body
and then they can perform at a higher level.
They can perform at a higher level. So people are looking at different ways of cheating in sport all the time.
But there's also in the Paralympics now, aren't there, kind of mental illness is part of the... So then how... They
have to see the test.
Yes.
And about a decade ago, the Spanish basketball team won the gold medal, and then they found out that all of them were not tested for mental capacity, and all would have failed it anyway because they were too smart to beat it. And they found out that lots of people were cheating, and lots of them lost the gold medals.
It's interesting you say that. I was with a friend a couple of years ago, and we met... I've got to be careful what I say here, because I might get him into trouble. I don't want to. We met another person, and my friend is a former professional footballer, so he's performed at the highest level and in a totally competitive environment. And I was chatting to this chap, who my friend had introduced me to, and during the conversation he said, "Oh, I'm an Olympian. I've competed in the Olympics," and I was very impressed. I was always, and my friend, who's this former professional footballer, was kind of just looking around, not interacting, and we walked off, and I said, "Oh, very impressive guy, that Olympian," and he just went Paralympian and turned around and walked off, because in his mind he wasn't a proper a true sportsman, because he was competing, and he looked perfectly fit and able, this guy, by the way. I don't know what his disability was for him to be a Paralympian, but it was interesting the way my friend, who was a professional athlete, was dismissing this Paralympian. But what you're saying now suggests that maybe that's not as competitive as it could be in that situation.
I think that's also about Paralympics. I'm not a fan of the Paralympics as the Olympics, because it's very hard to define what your disability is. So some swimmers, you can't swim in that race if you've lost your arm there, or lost your arm there, or lost your arm there. So each one has got a different disability. There's only one disability you're not allowed to compete in the Paralympics: if you're deaf.
Oh, really?
And when I found that, I was like, why? But you can't compete as... There's no deaf category in the Paralympics.
Is that because they can't hear the starter going off?
No, it's basically because it doesn't impair you at all. But you think it'd impair you in a team game.
Yeah,
when you're shouting instructions and shouting,
yeah.
Stuff like that. But for some reason, deaf people are not. There's no categories for deaf people. But Paralympics themselves, and we keep talking about woke stuff. The Paralympics basically at quite a high level. To me, I want disabled people to play sports. Do whatever you want.
Yeah, of course.
But A, I don't find it entertaining.
Yeah.
And B, I find it very patronising.
Yeah.
Oh, see how good they are in wheelchairs.
Yeah, but isn't that a manifestation? Is when you watch a sport, you want to watch the best in the world competing against the best in the world. And this is an interesting point, because we're now moving on to something that may get a lot of criticism from our gentle listeners. But for example, women's football versus men's football.
Yeah.
Now, everybody complains that women football, or a lot of people complain, a lot of progressives complain that women should be paid the same as men in football, but the reality is...
No one watches it.
I think more people watch it now than used to, but it is not as any way as entertaining as watching men's football, because the speed, the power, the skill of a male footballer is phenomenally different to a woman footballer. And a recent example of that is the Australian female soccer team were asked to play a school team of 15-year-old boys, just a local school basically, and the school beat the Australian women's soccer team, professional soccer player, something like 15-0.
Yeah.
I mean,
it happens all the time. It happened to the American football team, female football team, when they were world champions.
Yes.
American team of 15-year-old lads beat them 9-0.
Yeah, yeah. And if you watch that game, the women literally do not stand a chance at all. The boys are fast, they're skillful, just rocketing goals in left, right, and centre. And I think just on this, again, I wasn't looking for trans stories this week, but quite a few. And this isn't really a trans story, but it's a story that kind of... So the West Riding of Yorkshire, the girls' football league there, I don't know if you've seen this story. There's 6,000 girls, under 16 girls in this league who all play games against each other, which is fantastic. I think it's, even though I'm not a fan of watching female football, I think it's great there's a league. I think it's great they've got their own team. So they've refused to let a boy play, a young boy, and this is a boy who's a misfit in his own... He can't play. He doesn't like playing football against other boys. He doesn't.
Because he's no good. So he'll play against the girls.
I don't wish to malign him in any way, this boy. So it's not a trans thing, this. So it's not a trans...
It's an equality thing.
Trans boy. It's an equality. So the FA are now potentially threatening to pull the licence and the funding from this fantastic, Yorkshire league of girls because they won't allow the boy in. But the thing about boys, and I'm not on Twitter now, but I was on Twitter for quite a while. When I started to wake up to what was going on in the world, is when my wife alerted me to the trans thing, and I went on Twitter, and I actually got quite a lot of followers. And I think I told you I used to post things about trans, and sports particularly used to enrage me because men physically are so different to women. They're physically bigger, their bones are bigger, their cardiovascular system is on, their heart's 4 times the size of men, their muscle mass is their VO2. Even men who have become or become trans women and taken drugs retain those physical advantages that are just phenomenal compared to. And I actually tweeted a tweet one time just listing these various physiological differences that men have, and Ricky Gervais liked it actually. I think I told you that at that time. Ricky Gervais liked it, which I thought was quite nice. And this is an example of it. So as a result of the progressive views now and the trans thing, this league is potentially going to be destroyed because they're refusing to let a boy play. But it's not even this is a girls' club. And it's just not fair, is it? This is not fair to let a boy, even a 15-year-old boy, play against girls in a competitive situation like this.
Life isn't fair. So it wasn't fair when the feminists and progressives turned the Boy Scouts into the Scouts and let women join.
Yes.
It wasn't fair when men lost all their male spaces, like the vault in the pub and men's clubs and places where men went to be together.
Yeah.
It wasn't fair when all that happened.
Yeah.
But now the snake's turning and it's now damaging women's only spaces.
Yes.
And this isn't men and boys shouting to access those spaces. This is feminists and progressives inviting men and boys to use those spaces.
Yeah.
So the people who damaged and destroyed men-only spaces were feminists and the progressives, and they're doing exactly the same now to women-only spaces. And both of it was wrong. I get no satisfaction out of women losing their spaces now going, ha, you took our spaces, we're taking you. I get no satisfaction out. We had separate spaces because both sexes needed time away from each other. And people say to me, yeah, but you didn't lose your private spaces like your changing rooms. Well, do you know what? Men don't care about that.
Correct.
Men don't care. If some women want to come in and watch me naked, that's all right with me.
There's absolutely no threat to a man
for
a woman to come into a man's space. And if a man is naked in front of a woman, most men would not be bothered. In fact, most men will probably enjoy that process.
So because men and women are different, we have different priorities.
Yes.
So men wanted spaces where they can be men, because when you introduce a woman to a group of men, all those men's behaviour changes because now there's a woman there now as well.
Yeah.
So we lost our spaces where we could be men.
Yeah.
And that's not about hunting and let's kill animals and let's arm wrestle. It's about holding each other accountable. And that's what men do with each other. And that's what we do with younger men That's how younger men know what they can do, what they can't do, because the older men have taught them. So it's about, talking about life and relationships, and it's just all those general things you would talk about come out in conversations when you've got men together, and they learn off each other very differently to how women learn off each other, because we're almost different creatures sometimes.
Yeah.
So going back to the football, he should not be allowed. It's women's sports. We have women's sports for a reason. We have men's sports for a reason. We have Paralympics for a reason. If we're going to have sports and we're going to segregate those sports on different lines, then we need to enforce those lines. Otherwise, there is no sports. What I would like to see is, because we've got a real big football promoter in Greater Manchester who loves football, is always supporting every football club. Even if it's not in Greater Manchester, he'll spend his time saving it and tweeting about it and writing to the Premier League. The man's called Andy Burnham. He's a big football fan.
No, he isn't.
Well, he says he's a big football fan. We need him to comment on this.
Yeah.
We need him to say, as a huge football supporter who loves Everton Football Club, even though he's a Greater Manchester mayor, wrap your head round that.
Oh, is he an Everton fan?
Everton supporter.
Okay.
You're not on Twitter. He's on Twitter all the time
Yeah.
the Premier League about
they relegated the point.
He's been going about that.
They got 3
months.
points back last week.
Yeah. But he needs to step up now and say, no, these girls' teams need to be girls only. But will he?
No.
I don't think he will, because he's a coward.
Yeah.
And he's scared of the feminists and the progressives coming after him.
Well, I suspect, but I don't know. Has Andy Burnham said trans women are women?
No.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
I commend him for that.
No, he hasn't said anything about trans.
Oh, he's not said anything about
No,
trans?
he keeps his mouth shut.
Right, okay.
And makes sure...
Because I was saying most Labour, prominent Labour politicians have said trans women are women, haven't they? So I'm surprised that Andy Burnham hasn't done that as well. But no, I mean, Andy Burnham blows with the wind, doesn't he? Depending on what's going to get him. I think most people know that. I think Andy Burnham, and I meant to mention it to you actually. I remember years ago there was a letter they had written to Prince Charles. Have you heard about this?
No.
And it's kind of, if you read it, you should use it in your campaign, Nick, because it's the most sycophantic, toadying letter you've ever seen, basically, saying, Your Majesty, you're fantastic and all that. I mean, this is from a Labour politician toadying up to presumably...
He wasn't a child at the time.
No, this is probably 5 years ago. And I read the letter, I thought, oh, that's just horrible.
I'll Google it and find it.
Yeah, just toadying. So yeah, you need to. So he will just blow with the wind. So I doubt he will say anything about this.
No, he won't.
But this again is the FA, the Football Association, very powerful. This is the one that forces us to watch the players taking the knee at the.
Well, that says it all, doesn't it?
And there's no doubt about it, and I think Graham Linehan said this, that the tide is turning on trans. And you said something very interesting last week when I read out a series of headlines that I was enraged by. And you said, and I think it was really perceptive, you said the fact that this is now being talked about means that this is now a public debate. These issues, trans, Islam, all that sort of stuff is now a public debate. And I think that public debate is happening. But the elites, these organisations, don't seem to understand that. So the FA in this situation, but another example I wanted to talk about today, Justin Webb, who's a presenter on the Today programme, and you may have heard this story. Yeah. So he said he was I don't know what he was talking about, but he mentioned trans women, and the phrase he used was trans women, in other words, males. Right? Now that statement is a statement of fact. It's truth. There's no ambiguity about it. No trans woman is going to argue with the fact that they are a male.
Loads do.
I actually think they accept that they are males who they believe have transformed into women or whatever. But trans women, by their very nature, must be male, because otherwise they wouldn't be a trans woman. They would be a woman, wouldn't they? If they were a female, they would be a woman.
But then all trans women are women. And this use of language or whatever. The point is that somebody complained
about Justin Webb saying that. Whether it was one person or 10, I don't know. I should imagine.
I think it was one.
I would imagine it was one person or a very small number of people. This complaint was upheld by the BBC Executive Complaints Unit, whatever the devil that is. Why would they uphold that complaint, given it is simply truth?
Their reasoning was it was an opinion, and the BBC should be opinionless. And if you do have an opinion, it should be followed up by someone else's opinion that disagrees. That was their complaint. That was why they made that decision. I don't see someone saying trans women, biological men, is an opinion. It's fact. But they've been captured. They've been captured years ago, decades ago, just like the Premier League. And these organisations are years and years behind the populace. They may catch up, but they probably will.
I think they must.
Catch up.
I think they have to.
Yeah, I think they will probably catch up, but years out of date, and we will see if they do. But that gentleman works for the BBC, so he should know better. I think there'll be lots and lots of opinions he has that me and you will disagree with him on. He probably thinks it's, the country's institutionally racist. He probably thinks that there'll be lots of things he thinks about.
What, Justin Webb thing?
Yes.
Oh, you mean in addition to saying trans women are male?
Yeah, no, I think if you work at the BBC, you're basically woke, and he'll be woke.
Yeah.
He's just woke apart from the trans issue.
I see.
A little bit like Graham Linehan.
Yeah.
He's basically woke,
yeah,
apart from the one issue of trans.
Yeah.
So all these, and both of them will be progressives. Graham Linehan was a big lefty several years ago. Yeah. And what happens with these people is they're quite happy taking on board the status quo and saying that's fact and that should be our social norm and social morality, because everyone around me seems to agree with it, and I was born into this era, and that's what both of them have done. Gay rights and anti-racism, and they buy into all that because it's always been around since I've been an adult. But when something new comes along, they've not been brainwashed into that, and suddenly their intelligence goes, oh, that's a bit weird. Nothing else was weird before that because they took that as social
they've been indoctrinated.
Exactly. But the new thing's the weird thing, and once they push back on that, they're an apostate, and they won't go after apostates crazy, which we've talked about before. Yeah. They can't have apostates, because if we have people in our group leaving saying we're all mental, then more people will leave saying we're all mental, and then people might think we're mental.
You've mentioned Graham Linehan, and I want to talk about him, and I think I mentioned to you that my views on Graham Linehan. When I was originally on Twitter and doing that, and I may have interacted with him a couple of times on Twitter, or he interacted with my tweets on Twitter. My wife introduced me to what he was doing. Yeah. And for our listeners who may not know who he is, and I'm sure they do, he is a writer, a phenomenal comedy writer. He wrote Father Ted, he wrote The IT Crowd, and
Father Ted is probably one of my favourite sitcoms of all time. I've never watched IT Crowd.
The IT Crowd is hilarious as well.
Father Ted was hilarious.
Phenomenal writing, and he wrote an episode of The IT Crowd, which you haven't seen, in which one of the main characters finds out that they're going out with a trans woman, a man basically, and they find out, and then they have basically a brawl, as two men would have a brawl basically. So it was quite well written, well observed, and he got a massive backlash from Pink News and all these other places as well, and just tried to defend himself. And that descended into, and I would think he's probably been going 5 or 6 years now, hasn't he, on this thing. So as a result of him trying to defend himself and looking into what was happening in the trans community and the trans activism, his life has been destroyed. Yeah. His families, his wife's divorced him, his children don't live with him anymore, his career has been destroyed. Yeah. He's had no work from the BBC or ITV, all his comedy, and he actually said 5 years ago, I spent all my time in Soho. All my friends were in the media.
Yeah.
Now I don't have any friends in the media, and I spend most of my time in Westminster. He is leading the vanguard on the action against the trans activists. He was one of the people who was instrumental in Tavistock closing, in the stopping the use of puberty blockers in the country. He's still vilified, denigrated, and treated horrifically by the media. If you go onto his Wikipedia page, it basically belittles him, calls him a transphobe and all that kind of stuff. You know, as you said, he was very left-wing. I don't think he's left-wing anymore.
I would imagine he's still very left-wing.
Yeah, his views now chime far more with maybe people like us about the things we look at. Isn't Graham Linehan, I suppose is my question at the end of all this, isn't he one of the real heroes of our time? A man who has sacrificed everything for a principle? Because we don't get many of those people around anymore, do we?
We don't. I think hero might be a bit strong, as in he never meant any of this to happen.
I think maybe he didn't at the beginning, but surely now.
No, but once you're in the fight, once you've lost everything, it's a lot easier to speak up when you've got nothing else to lose.
Yes.
He didn't opt into this, which is a little bit unfair with me, because he still did the right thing at the right time. He is part of this movement, and it's also helpful to have people who were lefties to be on our side, so other people can see it's not just people who lean to the right, it's people who you thought were on your side have now seen the light. And if we're going to reach some of the lefties, it needs to be converted lefties, because they know how they think and what matters to them. So he is one of the generals in this fight, but the trans issue is just one tiny part of this progressive fight we've got. We could win the trans thing tomorrow. We're winning the trans thing. Won't change anything if it's just a trans thing we win.
Yeah. Because
there's another 99 issues just as serious, if not more serious, than the trans issue that we need to get to grip with.
Yeah.
But I'm glad he's changed some of his views. I just think we need to be a bit careful that we don't turn him into a saint, because when the trans issue is over the next couple of years, he'll have many opinions and points of view that I will vehemently disagree with.
Yeah, but you don't mind disagreeing with other people's opinions.
Yeah, no.
Or you don't mind other people having opinions. Yeah. But I think for me, I do think he's a hero. I think he's a hero because he was one of the elite, wasn't he? He was one of the
in crowd.
Yeah, he was one of the in crowd. He was in there. He was in London. He was fated. He had a fantastic career.
TV series. Everything.
Yeah, he had everything, and that's all gone. He's given all that up now. You know, and I think
his marriage.
I mean, and that's his bravery to me. So I think history will look on him very kindly in maybe 20 years' time, 20 or 30 years. For me, they're giving all these people knighthoods all over the place who don't deserve them. Somebody like him would deserve an honour in my mind. So I do think he is a hero. And as he himself describes himself, he likes to think of himself as almost a rock in a field, immovable. And he is almost like that. He sits there, he keeps his opinions, he's vilified, treated badly all the time, but he will not move that position, basically. And, you know, I when I watch the interview, and it might be worth watching if you get a chance, watch the interview, he comes across very, you know, with real dignity, you know, a man who has sacrificed everything and carries on doing it, really. You know, so I was really impressed with him.
Good for him. Good for him.
Thank you. Just on the elites again, and I'm sure again you're aware of this, and I can't remember the name of this trans bloke. He's the one who he's actually quite creepy, this character, to look at, in my opinion. And he's American, and Bud Light used him to promote.
Oh, Dylan Mulvaney.
Dylan Mulvaney. I actually find him quite scary to look at because he's like the Joker in Batman. He's a bit like that to me. He's kind of this kind of very.
There's another one online who's as famous as him. Now he's creepy. I can't remember his name, but yeah.
Is it Jazz Jennings?
It might be.
Because Jazz Jennings is a very, very famous trans woman, a bloke who had all the surgery, and he's on YouTube a lot. But he's become obese. He's very unhappy. He's depressed, basically.
No, it's not him. It's another. But anyway, I can't remember his name.
So yeah, Dylan Mulvaney. Yeah. So some bright spark at. So the group holding company is called AB InBev.
Yeah.
I think it's German originally or something. They own Bud Light, and they decided to celebrate Dylan Mulvaney's year of transition by launching a Bud Light. A Bud Light with Dylan Mulvaney's image on and something like that. Anyway.
Well, they didn't launch that. What they did for celebrities was create a 6-pack of beer with their faces on it to send to celebrities so they could drink it and post pictures of them. So that picture wasn't on all Bud Light, it was only on those 6-pack they sent him.
Oh really?
To advertise Bud Light.
I didn't.
So it was still about advertising Bud Light, but that his face wasn't on commercial cans.
But it was this freaky bloke drinking a can of Bud Light with his face on to celebrate a year of him transitioning. Now, as a result of that, AB InBev, which was the biggest selling beer in America, is no longer the biggest selling beer in America. Their sales last quarter have dropped 17%, and other beers as a result have done that. And this is big. This is big in the commercial world. Their share price has dropped as a result of that. So, I think you and I have talked about this before, but we have the FA, we have the BBC refusing to see what is happening here. And then we have the business world where they've done this. And this must have sent shockwaves through the business world to understand that maybe we're making a mistake here supporting this situation, because a 17% drop, we're talking probably billions of pounds here in terms of what's
they've lost 1.4 billion.
Yeah. Does that give you kind of hope that people have reacted this way to this situation?
Yes, and it's happening all over, but not to that scale. So if you look at Disney have lost billions by going woke. A lot of the social media companies are letting go of all their DII managers, and a lot of it is changing. The BBC won't change that easy because they're not commercially sensitive. We steal our money off you for your license fee every year anyway, so we don't need you to like us. We steal your money anyway.
Yeah.
And the Premier League, disappointed with the football fans at the Premier League because the football fans didn't really care that people were taking the knee to Black Lives Matter, and football fans, most of them are so deluded and so tribal that their team in the FA can do almost anything that they disagree with, and they'll still support that team.
Yeah.
So they've got a bit of a weird audience. But most commercial businesses have to be very sensitive to the needs of their customer, and that's where Bud Light went wrong for two reasons. The first reason is Bud Light, the main customers for Bud Light were working class white men. So why does a working class white man care about a trans man on a tin or advertising Bud Light? So that had no impact on them as a marketing strategy. But then what came out at the same time was a podcast with the I think it was the vice president of Bud Light, who was head of marketing, and she explained why they've got Dylan Mulvaney, and she doesn't want the beer now being drunk just by white working class men. It's a little bit common that, and she did this podcast about it, and by the time you've watched it you're going, I'm never drinking your beer again, love. And she spent an hour insulting the people who buy her product.
Yeah.
But that doesn't always work. It all depends who your market is. So Nike then did a load of this stuff as well. They sent Mulvaney female jogging pants, and he put them on and didn't hit Nike, because who are Nike's customers? Nike customers are urban youth who don't really care about anything, and women. And believe it or not, I would say 50% of women agree with this nonsense.
Oh yeah.
So you're not upsetting anybody, but when you're looking at white working class men, then you can upset him with this. So it's understanding your market and sometimes about being a bit lucky or unlucky, how it affects you.
Yeah, yeah. I think you're right. It's the target audience, isn't it? I think the reaction to that was immediate because it is working class older men who drink Bud Light. Yeah.
And then celebrities got on board. We had some American country and western singers who I've never heard of but were big over there, with shotguns blowing up packs of Bud Light. So it took it. People were looking for something to happen where they could express themselves, and that Bud Light thing happened at the right place at the right time with the right message. For people to go, I understand this and I've had enough of that.
Yeah.
And that's
And it's interesting what you're saying about women. 50% of I agree with you. I think 50% of women do think the trans thing is. I mean, we've talked about this before about the fact that women are more empathetic in terms of people's opinion, and the part of the reason that trans women get this traction with women is because what they're saying is by recognising us in sport, by recognising us in women's spaces, we're being validated as a woman because we're a woman, and we want to be validated. And I think women react to that and go, yes, we must validate you and do that. There's an interesting article by Suzanne Moore, I think you've probably heard of. She's a journalist, and she, when I was on Twitter, was very active about the trans issue as well. And she's saying, she's done an article in the Telegraph saying, I won't sacrifice my safety so a trans woman feels validated. And what she's writing about is Hampstead Ladies Pond. I don't know if you've heard of this. So in Hampstead, apparently, I don't know because I don't move in those circles, but apparently there's a ladies pond.
It's been going on for several years.
Yeah, it has it. There's a gentleman, I think it happened in 2019, and a mixed pond basically. And the ladies pond, they've allowed the ladies pond, trans blokes to go into the ladies ponds. And there's anecdotal stories about men with erections, naked men in these areas basically. And the reason they've allowed it to happen is because they want to allow these trans women to feel validated as real women. And she's just saying, I'm not prepared to sacrifice my spaces for these trans. But what's interesting, we were talking about, the question I want to ask here is, we were talking about type of trans people. We've identified young girls who may in a different life have been goths or cut themselves or whatever. We've identified sports cheats. My final question on the trans thing is, what kind of man wants to do that? Why would a man with full genitalia, with his wig on, called Dorothy, as you described him, he's got the choice of going in a male pond. He's got the choice of going in a mixed pond there, whatever. But he wants to go into the women's pond. Why would he want to do that? Because I mean, I'm asking you as though you understand. Yeah, no, I know you're not trans, by the way. I'm just asking. But what? Surely any right-thinking person with his wig on or whatever would think the mixed pond will be fine for me because it's men and women, so it doesn't really matter that I'm dressed like a woman because it's whatever. But they actually want to go. Of
course they do. Why does the wolf want to get in the sheep pen? It's exactly the same reason. And the reason why they want to go into the women's pool, A, because they'll get a sexual kick out of it, and some of that kick will be making those women uncomfortable. And that, that's a sexual kick for some men. Also for what they can see, they may seem unchanging, there's a kick there, but there's also the big kick of they're looking at me like I'm a woman. And there's a whole mental health issue around this called AGP, which is autogenophilia. I struggle with that word. And that's men who get sexually aroused by thinking of themselves as women and other people thinking of them as women. And that's why they go in those ponds. The reason why there are danger in those ponds is because, as you said before, men are physically stronger than women. And I don't care what anybody says, an average, a poorly healthy man can destroy 99% of women.
Yeah, I agree.
So you might know, these women who go, I've done karate, I've done kung fu, I go to the gym. It's like, yeah, love, you might outrun me. That's at my age now. You may outrun me.
Yeah.
But that's it. If I get hold of you,
if I get my hands on you,
if I put one hand on you and get a grip, you're done.
Yeah.
And we've convinced a lot of women, especially young women, that they're just as strong as men, and that they can fight men, and that they can take a punch off a man.
Yeah.
Absolute nonsense.
Yeah.
We've made women less safe by drilling this into them, that they think they can take a man on.
And I think if you watch something like the Marvel movies and things like that, they have these women who do these fantastic and take down 3 men. That just will never happen in real life. Men are so much physically stronger, faster than women. It just can't happen.
Yeah, and that's not an insult.
Yeah, no, it's
that's
not an
a
insult.
biological reality, because our roles were all about protection and hunting and providing, so we had to be stronger. Women's roles were about raising children, looking after the village, looking after the home. And there's no insult in doing any of those jobs, but we've been designed for those jobs. It's like criticising a cow for not being able to bring down an elephant. Well, no, cows are designed to bring down elephants. Lions are designed to bring down elephants, not cows.
Yeah.
So, again, feminism have convinced women that being a woman isn't good enough. And most men can't believe that's true. There's nothing higher in our lives than the women in our lives. We would die for women. We put ourselves at risk all the time for women. But women are being told by other women, the worst thing you can be is just a woman. Like, no, that's the highest form of praise, is you being a woman, you being a mother, you looking after the home, you're having a job if you want a job, you're having a career if you want options, but we denigrate their innate role of motherhood, and we've been doing it for a long time. And the reason why those men are dangerous in that pool also is because the women's natural protectors, decent men, are not in there.
Nowhere to be seen. And
so you've left the one rogue wolf with your flock.
Yeah.
And what we need to protect the flock are sheepdogs.
Yeah.
And the sheepdogs don't go into that pen because we respect the sheep too much.
Yes, correct. We've created that area for them to be safe.
To be safe.
And we've let the wolf in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we've not let the wolf in. Some of those sheep invited those wolves in because wolf said he was a sheep.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. And talking about the male strength thing,
you stay there. Stay there one sec. I'm gonna. And for people who want to know more about how this happens, it's the first time I've done that. My new book, Feminism, Myths, Lies, Ungratefulness, is all in there. Everything we've talked about, that I've been talking about, all in there.
I think
available on Amazon.
We'll have another plug at the end.
Yeah.
And I think I know you feel strongly about this. I agree that feminism has contributed towards a number of these issues we see, especially with the trans movement there. But I think there's a number of other factors that push into it. It's not just feminism, it's education, it's universities, it's all those things.
And what's ruined our education system?
What's ruined our education
feminism.
system? Possibly, or progressive or wokeism or whatever. Yeah. There's lots of male academics who support this stuff.
Lots of male feminists.
Yes, there are. Yes, well, feminists aren't only women. That's probably true. But I think it's an interesting point, isn't it? Because you made a very good point. What is better than being a woman? For a woman, being a woman should be the thing they are proud of, the thing they celebrate. And the trans thing is very similar to that. Fairly early on in the trans movement, there was this phrase, born in the wrong body. I don't know if you heard that. They don't use that anymore. Yeah. Because that's actually been kind of eviscerated because actually nobody's born in the wrong body. But this is all about people being happy with what they are. And a lot of the issues we face now is people not being happy with what they are in terms of their physicality, what they are in terms of their race, what they are in terms of their intelligence, what they are in terms of their earning power. All this is about unhappiness. People not accepting the reality of what they are and embracing that as well.
But that's always been the case. All we've done now is made mentally ill people, make it easier for them to destroy their own lives even more. So let's look at race thing. Look at Michael Jackson. Look what Michael Jackson did to himself. Because for whatever reasons, I think I read somewhere that he was abused by his father. Not sexual abuse. His father was a real violent man. And stuff like that. And then we have got girls cutting themselves. I remember in the 90s, that was huge in schools. Girls slicing their arms.
Anorexia nervosa.
Anorexia, throwing up. Do I look fat? Well, you're 4 stone, love. You don't look fat. I'm fat. Look at this. That's called skin. So we've always had these issues. We've got issues of people, 100 years ago thought they were Napoleon. Again, we have people who think they see the Virgin Mary. So there's always been these people who are mentally ill and either destroy their own lives or convince themselves it's true because of status and validation. Our brains are very complex and they're easily broken, very easily broken.
We'll move on from trans now if that's okay, because it's something I wanted to raise with you because it happened. We were talking about it last week and it actually happened, so I'd like to raise it with you. But just before we roll into that, this use of words, semantics, I think we talked earlier about the way phraseologies can be used, trans women are women, and it's
anti-racist.
It's words, isn't it? But one word that has been bandied around a lot recently, which will lead into my last point that I want to talk about outside of trans, is Islamophobia. And there was a character on, I think it was on the Spectator TV, I haven't got his name now, but he was talking about Islamophobia, but he was talking about the word Islamophobia, because you will know that Labour have a bill that they want to introduce about which is so basically is any anti-Muslim speech will be regarded as hate and you can be arrested for it, basically. But what he was saying is Islamophobia is not a great word.
It's made up. It was made up in... When was that made up? Not that long. I can't remember now the exact when it was made up. But it was only several decades ago.
It's made up and it's been defined within Labour's manifesto as a particular word.
They've got a law if they win next year that they want to bring to Parliament, and you're right.
Correct.
Any criticism of Islam will be a hate crime and you can be arrested. So what is Islamophobia? So the word itself means a fear of Islam.
Yes.
That's quite a valid thing to have.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you be afraid of a religion that will kill you, blow you up, chop your head off if you criticise its prophet or anything? Well, that's a sensible phobia to have. So then it's not a phobia, is it?
No.
A phobia is a rational fear of something.
Yeah.
But it's not irrational to be afraid of militant Islamists who will kill you, who kill people in this country quite frequently. So that's not what the word means. Islamophobia basically was, and that's who created it. It was the terrorist organisation, the Brotherhood of Islam.
Oh right.
And that organisation is banned in most Muslim
countries.
Was that
Louis Farrakhan? Was he part of that?
No. This was an Egyptian.
Or was that Nation of Islam?
That's Nation of Islam. Yeah. So this was an Egyptian terrorist group, and they're banned in most Muslim countries.
Yeah.
So that's what they are. They came up with the word, I think, for several reasons. The first reason is they saw what the word racist did to white progressives. So we need a word like racism that will shut people up and stop people criticising our religion. Just like the Jews have. It's called anti-Semitism because the Jews are a race of people and also a religion. So, Jewish people quite often, not mistakenly, on purpose, will use anti-Semitism to shut someone up when it wasn't about them as a people, it was about their religion or it's about the state of Israel and stuff like that. So the Muslims wanted a powerful word, a super word, and they came up with Islamophobia. And you ask anybody what is Islamophobia, and they'll tell you now, it's racism. Well, it's not racism because Islam isn't a race.
Correct.
It's an idea.
Yeah.
And if we're going to have Islamophobia, do we have Christian phobia, Hindu phobia?
Correct.
So it's pure nonsense. And the only reason Labour are playing with this, and I'll get into that in a minute, but the reason why Labour's playing with this is because they want the bloc Muslim vote.
Yes.
And they want it more than ever now because they're in trouble with the bloc Muslim vote.
Yeah, which I think I'm going to come to.
Yeah, we will get on to that. Now, will Labour go through with this once they're in power? I'm not too sure they will now.
Really?
I think Labour may have woken up, not all of Labour, but the top of Labour have woken up and said to themselves, we always knew this day would come, and the Muslim bloc vote are rebelling and they're becoming dangerous and we're being threatened. What's her name?
Angela Burnham.
No, not Angela Rayner. The American AOC.
I know.
Cortez.
Cortez, yeah.
The video of her today or yesterday online being chased basically down the stairs by Free Palestine people.
Really?
Because she supports Free Palestine, but not enough.
Oh, really?
So they have a go at her, and she's a far left lunatic herself.
Yeah.
So maybe Labour now are saying to themselves, oh, we need to control these. If we put this bill through now, they're going to use it against us and win. So who knows what they're going to do. But Islamophobia doesn't exist, completely made up, and it's a cloak that radicals want to use to stop any criticism of Islam.
Yeah. Well, what this chap was saying, and I can't remember, forgive me, I can't remember his name, but he was saying the problem with Islamophobia is an umbrella term, and he said that because there are issues for Muslims in this country, there is racism against Muslims, like there used to be no Jews, no blacks, no Irish.
It's not racist if it's against a Muslim.
There is anti-Muslim sentiment in this country, and that's the reality. There are people who don't like Muslims who will actively prevent a Muslim from doing something. And that truly is something that needs to be dealt with. But what he's saying is there should not be a problem with criticising a religion, which is what you just said. But Islamophobia wraps everything up in the same umbrella.
Yeah, of course it does. Yeah.
So it takes care of somebody who might be anti-Muslim because they don't like Muslims for whatever reason, but it then stops people from criticising Islam. Yeah. And he said the same goes for, as you just said now, for the word anti-Semitism, because anti-Semitism is an umbrella term. There are people who don't like Jews. If they see a Jew walking down the street with the whatever they're called, they will be hostile to that person. They will prevent that person from progressing in career, business or whatever, not serve them or whatever. So there are people who don't like Jewish people.
But there's laws, we have laws that cover all that already.
Yes, correct. But then anti-Semitism is a much broader umbrella term in the same way, and it prevents criticism of the Israeli government.
Yeah, of course it does.
And of course people are allowed to criticise the Israeli government, as of course people are allowed to criticise the religion of Islam. And the problem with these sweeping terms, the problem with Islamophobia, if it is enshrined in law, it will prevent criticism. It will basically become a blasphemy law. It will prevent criticism of a religion enshrined in law. That's what he was saying is the issue. So what he was saying is these words like Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, mean breaking down into granular areas which are appropriate for that particular thing. And it was a very, it was interesting to hear him.
I don't think we need that at all.
Yeah, I agree.
I think we have enough laws in this country that protect everybody in every minority.
Yeah.
It just to such an extent, I think we have too many.
Yes. Well, I think you and I have discussed this before. Our ideal party will come in and say, I'm going to fix the National Health Service, I'm going to fix education, I'm going to fix the police, and I'm not going to touch on it, and I'm going to actually get rid of a load of other laws, basically. And I think that's what we need.
Yeah.
So we discussed this last week. You referenced it, and I didn't really understand what you were saying. Since then, I've read a number of articles, and it's about George Galloway.
Yeah.
And I think at the time I said I like George Galloway, and I do like George Galloway, not for his views.
He's very charismatic.
His charisma.
Yeah.
I find him a very charismatic character. I love listening to him talk. I remember when he went to America and he was interrogated by the
Senate,
and he just wiped the floor with them.
He did, yeah.
So I really admire him as an orator or whatever. His views his views are controversial. I think I don't know. And he may sue me, but I think he might be pro-Hamas or pro-Palestine.
Oh, he is. Yeah, absolutely.
Whatever. So, however, what is interesting is he won an election to be the MP of Rochdale.
Yep.
And he didn't win it by a little bit. He won it by a hell of a lot. Now, you and I have spoken, and I keep saying to you, Nick, why isn't there somebody emerging from the masses who represents the views of the people?
Yeah.
Now, my nervousness now is George Galloway that person? Is he the disruptor that I've been waiting for, but isn't the one I wanted, if that makes sense? And to add to that question, and maybe a separate part of the question, does Galloway's win mean that all bets are off for the next election? So 2 parts to that question. First of all, is he the disruptor?
Is he the chosen one?
Is he the chosen one that I didn't really want, but is emerging? Because I've always thought somebody's got to come out of this and start to. Is he that person? And secondly, as a result of his win, are all bets off for the next election?
Is he the chosen one? No, he's not. He was the right person at the right time with the right national issue going on, affecting a substantial but still a minority of voters in a certain area of the UK. He will be over once the Free Palestine issue dies down, which eventually will die down. I didn't think it'd last this long, but it will go at some point. It has to at some point. Another world affair will take over. Something else will happen. It will die down. And then people then will look at him and will say to themselves, what's the point of voting for him? He's one man in Parliament. I need to get to a party that's going to be in government, and then maybe some of my concerns will be addressed. So Labour will take back those Muslim votes eventually if they play the cards right. So he's not the chosen one. He's disrupting. He may disrupt, and he is disrupting, and he may disrupt enough to change a general election, but he wouldn't win it. So the Muslim majority seem to be very unhappy with Labour at the moment.
Yeah.
And I can't see that going away anytime soon, as long as Free Palestine is still going on. He's talking now about running candidates across Greater Manchester against all the Labour MPs.
What's his party called?
It's called the
Workers'
Freedom Party or something. If he does that, he may win another seat somewhere, but if he doesn't win any more seats, he'll probably stop some of the Labour MPs winning their seats.
Yes. Yeah.
If he's taken a chunk of the Labour votes away. So someone like him could, if things go his way, stop Labour winning the next general election. Or if they still win with a tiny majority.
I think that's more likely. I think he potentially could prevent Labour from winning the majority they want to actually govern effectively for their period of time. Just something as simple as that.
Yeah, so he could definitely affect Labour.
He's got time, hasn't he? I mean, again, you said if this happens, you think they might have a general election in May.
Yep. So I'm not the only one saying that now. So on the news the other day, we had someone talking about the Rwanda bill is in the House of Lords, just got knocked down by the House of Lords, we're going to take it back again. And what he was saying was, with the George Galloway win and free Hamas, free Palestine, and if Sunak can get the first Rwanda flight up and off and landing in Rwanda with the first couple of dozen people, if you can get that done before the May election, they're going to call the May election.
Because they think that will drag enough of the votes away from Labour to mean they won't win the majority.
But I'm not sure if they think they can win or if they think they can, hung Parliament or whatever. But they must realise this is our best chance. Free Palestine and George Galloway is damaging Labour at the moment, but we know that's not going to last 4 months from now could all be over. So that's not going to last. And if we can land a plane in Rwanda and deport some people, we can then say, and now we're going to cure illegal immigration, and we're going to cure it over the next. So maybe they could, they could take some votes back. That would be their gamble.
I don't think they believe for a second they're going to win the election. I think what they're trying to judge now is their best chance of reducing the Labour majority.
Well, that's a common sense approach.
Yeah.
But when you're in politics and you run elections, you're always running them to win. Nobody thought John Major was going to win in '92. No one thought Boris Johnson was going to win in 2019 and got a huge majority. All the polls were saying the opposite, saying the opposite, saying the opposite. So they don't know. I'm sure the common sense is saying we're going to lose. So at least try our hardest and maybe reduce the majority. But they're probably thinking, but you never know. Stranger things have happened.
Yeah, possibly.
So he's not the saviour. George Galloway will not be the saviour. But he is a mini disruptor that might damage the Labour Party.
You don't know, do you? I mean, it's kind of, he's been around for years, hasn't he? Decades.
Oh, yeah, he knows what he's doing. He's a hell of a campaigner.
And he's now got a platform in Parliament, and he will be making speeches in Parliament.
You're lucky if you speak twice a year in Parliament.
Yeah.
So
they all seem to be the same people speaking all the time in Parliament when I watch it. There was always that little Scottish guy who was always speaking.
Yeah, but if you lead with a party, you speak more.
Right, okay.
And if your party leader likes you, they want you to speak more.
Oh, right, okay.
But the average person...
So you don't think they're going to give him a chance to speak?
No. He'll speak what most people do, backbenchers do, which is roughly twice a year.
Right, okay.
So we won't hear that much of him in Parliament. But he can cause trouble,
Yeah.
And he's a media...
And he's on the zeitgeist, isn't he? Because at the moment, a hell of a lot of people are in the pro-Palestine camp, aren't they? In terms of the marches, general sentiment.
Yeah. All the lefties.
Yeah.
So all the Labour supporters, one way or another,
are
in the Free Palestine camp. Some very mildly, let's stop all the killing. We don't like Hamas, but a two-state solution, all the way through to let's kill all the Jews. In Israel, and let's have it all Hamas. So there's a lot, but they're all on the Free Palestine side.
So he is knocking on that door very loudly, isn't he?
Yeah.
So I don't know. He is impressive when he speaks. He is impressive, and if he articulates his message strongly enough and motivates people, I think he could have an impact. I'm not sure, but it's a shame actually. The Reform Party, Richard Tice. If we had somebody like Galloway heading up that party, then you would have a very, very different, a very, very different dynamic, because they're getting, even with Tice, and he seems like a nice chap, but even with Tice, they're still getting 14 or 15% of the votes.
Yeah, but that's amazing.
Yeah.
This time last year, they were getting 7 or 8.
Yeah.
They're slow, and there's no point looking at jumps, because jumps come and jumps go. It's steady.
Yeah.
It's on 14% at the moment now, and...
So if somebody like the Reform Party had somebody like Galloway...
Yeah, well, we know who the person is. It's Farage.
I don't think Farage is. I'm not sure.
Farage won't come back this year.
No.
Farage, if Farage comes back, it will be after the next election.
Yeah.
That's when he'll come back, and then we'll see what happens then. But back to George Galloway.
Yes.
My fingers are crossed for this.
Have you met him, by the way?
No. I was on his podcast once.
Oh, really?
When he was not podcast, he was on RT television, Russia Today. I did a 15-minute interview with him on his podcast.
And so you do know him then?
Yeah, I've spoken to him. Yeah. And then when it was due out, I spoke to his producer and said, it's not come out yet. When's it coming out? I want to watch it. He went, there was something wrong with the sound, and we're not putting it out. All right, should we do another one? No, thank you.
Oh, he didn't like it.
So whatever I said, whatever I did,
he didn't like it.
They decided.
Oh, that's interesting.
They decided we're not having that Nick Buckley on our show. But my fingers are crossed for George Galloway that he decides either himself or one of his not supporters, someone who's with his party, with his backing, stands for Mayor Greater Manchester.
That would be great.
That will be great for me. he's going to take a load of votes off Andy Burnham.
Yeah.
And those votes would never come to me anyway.
Yeah.
So he would take a load of votes off Andy Burnham. He'd never win. His party wouldn't win because it's too big an area. He would only win at the moment with his strategy in areas with a high Muslim proportion. And across Greater Manchester, you lose a lot of that when you collate the whole area. But if you took 100,000 or 200,000 votes, so what did he get? 14,000.
I don't know the numbers, but I know it was a massive majority.
So I think he got 14,000 votes. Times that by 10.
Yeah.
Nearly 150,000
well,
votes.
Nick, you've always been a friend of the Muslims. I mean, it's kind of, this could be your, maybe give him a ring and just say, do you want to stand for his party?
I keep putting him, I keep tagging him into tweets to give him the idea. I want him to stand. If he could take, 150,000 votes off Andy Burnham.
Would you consider standing for his party?
Oh, absolutely not, no.
Because the views are too opposite to what you would?
Yeah.
Well, that could be a way to get some votes.
Yeah.
Final one, and it's a bit of a strange one. I don't know if you've even seen this, but when I read this, it was kind of a little story, and I read it and I thought, we really are under the control of the government and the state now, aren't we? And it's kind of dictating everything we do. And there's a statue in Dublin called the Molly Malone statue. I'm not quite sure. I did read about this. I can't remember, but it's a statue of a woman, and I don't know whether was she a prostitute or something. I'm not quite what, but her breasts are exposed. It's a copper statue.
She's got a very low cut.
Yes, but I think actually one of the breasts are exposed, basically.
Oh,
it's
I
a
didn't
statue.
say that. But you can see all the cleavage and
yeah. Anyway, so this statue, and this happens in life and society. It's like Churchill's foot in the House of Commons.
Yeah,
everybody touch it, and it's worn away. It's not worn away, but it's the brass has worn away. And when we were in Italy, in Florence, there was a ball there, again a copper or brass ball with water coming out of its mouth, and people rub the snout, and the snout is worn away. So people are. This statue, and this is what happens, isn't it? It's like a Pisa. We went to Pisa, the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Everybody was doing that pathetic thing. So this statue, people drape their arms around the woman and then rub her breast, her left breast, with their hands, and people take a picture, and it's a kind of a thing. So the Dublin Council and some people have complained, and the Dublin Council are now looking to stop this from happening by erecting barriers, putting structures up or whatever. And it's kind of, you look at this and you think, how much more of our lives do these idiots want to control? Something that is totally harmless is a local...
But they don't think it's harmless.
Right. Why?
My understanding would be that is the first step in raping a woman. So if you can put your hand around a statue, which is a representation, a life-size representation of a woman, and as a man, if you're quite comfortable then abusing that statue and putting your hands on her breast, that's only 1 or 2 steps away from you doing it to a real woman. And if you do that, and if you can treat a female statue like that, then that's 5 steps away from raping a woman. And if you can do that to a statue, that's only 10 steps away from you murdering a woman. And that's what they're being told. Again, usually by feminists and progressives who are saying this is all about male violence women. So the men who are putting their arms around this and doing this to a woman are really advertising their violence they want to commit to women. And if a statue in Dublin is not safe from abuse, well, how are women safe from abuse? Now that'd be their argument, which is a load of rubbish.
And that's the point, isn't it?
Yeah.
The point
we all know this is a brass statue.
Yeah.
We know it's not real.
Yeah.
We know it's a representation of a woman, but we know every single person knows that is not a woman. And 99.999% of people who have ever done that to that statue would never do that to a woman. And I would also say, I don't get the figures for this, I would say that a large proportion of the people who do that to the statue will also be women.
Yes, and in fact the picture in the paper about this article is a woman doing this to the woman.
And the reason why people are doing it, not like those other statues said, which is for look, rub that for look and rub this for look and things like that. They're doing it because it's funny.
Yeah.
It's a funny photo.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of humour. It's a little bit like the Carry On films.
Yes.
It's a little bit like Kiss Me Quick hats from Blackpool and
Yeah.
postcards of busty women and rude jokes. It's that sense of humour. It's also why Dublin's a good place for this. It's also a good place. It's also a good example of why lots of people don't like Mrs. Brown's Boys,
Right.
which I find very funny.
Oh,
And
I don't.
Well, yeah, lots of people don't find it funny, and they find it crude. They find it. It's because you're not used to that humour. That was a humour I grew up with in the 60s and 70s.
Right.
Of Blackpool, going to Blackpool, naughty postcards, Carry On films, and double meaning words, and people don't.
Yeah.
People don't get that humour anymore,
Yeah.
and it's also looked down upon now as well. That sort of humour, and hence that statue is just a manifestation of.
And this is it, isn't it? This puritanical streak that runs through the elites and our government and the state about how we should behave, about the correct way to behave. And if you don't behave in the correct way, we'll stop you from doing it, basically.
Only when the people are not acting the right way of a certain group of people. Dublin Council are not telling their young girls who go to Dublin a night out not to dress like tarts and not to have your breast hanging out like the statue. That would be a wrong thing to do to tell people how to live their lives. But white drunken men touching up a statue, now that's the wrong sort of behaviour.
Yes, yeah.
So it's a way of penalising the out-groups and trying to put your thumb on them by saying, even you having a bit of fun on a night out with a statue is not welcome in this city.
Yeah.
You should have no fun, and if you have any fun, it should not be at the expense of a female image. It's that nagging, again, for a particular group.
So you think this might be part of critical race theory then, basically? This is part of the fact, if you're a white man, you've got privilege and you're not allowed to basically enjoy yourself or have a laugh.
Not when it comes at the expense of a persecuted group, which is women.
But all I want them to do, Nick, is just leave us alone.
Yeah.
Why can't they just leave us alone? And we go back to this thing, they've got to change things and put laws in place to stop people enjoying themselves.
They've got to do something, otherwise, but they can't do what we want them to do because they're incompetent and they're too cowardly to fix what we want them to fix. But they've still got to do something, otherwise we'll ask, what's the point of these politicians? They don't do anything.
Yeah.
So they've got to come up with things that are meaningless, easy to achieve, to let the public know we're doing stuff on your behalf.
Yeah. I just find it quite chilling that they're even thinking about that or even talking about it. It should have just been dismissed. If anybody complained, it should have been dismissed and just, let us get on with our lives. It's interesting you talk about the humour of the 60s, 70s and 80s because my wife was watching something on YouTube and she saw a Dick Emery clip. Do you remember Dick Emery?
Yeah, I love Dick Emery.
And Dick Emery was for our gentle listeners who may not, Dick Emery was a comedian, a male comedian in the 70s? I think it was the 70s. Yeah. But a lot of his act was dressing as a woman, as a lot of male comedians did in those days. Stanley Baxter, Dick Emery.
Primetime TV shows.
Primetime TV. They used to dress as women. He used to dress as women. And one of his characters was, and you talk about the double entendre, it would be a woman, a blonde woman. She would be walking down the streets, a busty blonde woman, and an interviewer would come up to her and ask her a series of questions about a particular topic. But the questions were phrased with double entendre. You have to watch it, gentle viewers, to see it. And then every time he asked the question, she would get more and more affronted until eventually she basically punched him and said, "You are awful, but I like you," and then walked off, basically tripping over. So my wife was watching it and it reminded her of Dick Emery and she went back and watched some of the YouTube, it's on YouTube, clips. And my son, who's Tom, who's 21, he said to Anna, what are you watching? And he said, "Oh, it's Dick Emery." And she showed him this clip and he was
mortified.
No, he wasn't. He was creased up laughing at it, basically. And, he was laughing hysterically, almost tears were in his eyes, because it is incredibly funny. Yeah. It's incredibly funny humour, double entendre, all that sort of stuff. all that is lost to this
Absolutely.
generation.
I watched a film last week on BBC iPlayer from the early 80s, Blazing Saddles.
Yes.
And my wife had never seen it. All she knew was the farting scene
Yes.
where they're all eating beans. So I've not seen it in years. So I watched it, and suddenly I heard, I can't believe he said that. And she didn't laugh at anything. She was like, I can't believe they've said that. It's this BBC iPlayer. I can't believe that. She was absolutely astounded.
Really?
The use of the N-word,
Yeah.
the use of all these things, and she couldn't laugh at any of it.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I think she's been programmed over decades that she didn't find it offensive. She wasn't, no, but
It's just shocking.
I think she wanted to laugh, but decades and decades of brainwash has told her
You're not allowed to.
you're not allowed to laugh at that. That's racist. That's this, that, and she couldn't laugh.
Yeah.
No, I was laughing.
I mean, I actually think that this generation is missing out on some great humour. Some, that double entendre, the dynamic between men and women, and the sexual double entendre, all that sort of stuff, I think is hilarious. And
But we only could have that then because we still had sex-based roles in society.
Yes, yeah.
So it only worked then. It doesn't work now.
Yes.
The accusations would be now, why is she in the kitchen?
Yeah.
Why is she in the kitchen?
Yeah.
He could be in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And it would be all those things all the time, and the joke just wouldn't work.
Yeah. But the Carry On
I watched Carry On Camping a couple of months ago.
is that when she's doing the exercises
Yes.
in a bra?
Yeah.
But to me, that's funny. But now it's not allowed, that sort of humour,
No.
is it? It's not allowed at all, and it's a real shame because I think there's a very British sense to that kind of humour for me. The double entendre, and indeed, I was reflecting the other day on characters like John Inman.
Yep.
And Larry Grayson.
Yeah.
And a main strand of British humour was the closet gay actor, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Who the double entendre, the double entendre, Mrs. Slocum's pussy, for example, those things. That double entendre, very sex-based as well, around sexuality, male, female sex, gay sex as well. Kenneth Williams, all those characters. That was a fundamental strand of British humour, and it's gone now.
Yeah. And a lot of that came out of the theatre.
Yes.
It went from theatre in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and then when TV came along, a lot of it was transitioned into TV shows.
Yeah.
There's lots of shows I used to watch. You can't now watch on TV. It Ain't Half Hot Mum.
Yes.
That's very funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another one was Mind Your Language.
Yes.
It was an English school. You couldn't play that now. Indian guy was
Yes.
and then there's an African with an
But the reality is there are Indians like that.
Yeah.
And the reality is there are Africans like that, aren't there? Yeah. And what you're actually making, but you can make fun of people with an Italian accent or whatever. So you can make fun or have jokes about certain characteristics, but certain characteristics are verboten, aren't they? And it's kind of that. I mean, there were things like, as an Anglo-Indian growing up in the 70s, that when you watch things like Love Your Neighbour, there was racism in some of those things. They were racist.
I don't think there were.
Yeah,
so
there were.
If you remember Love Thy Neighbour, the white guy was racist sometimes.
Yes.
But he was always the butt of the joke.
He was the butt of the joke.
He never won any argument. He never won any. He never won any episode. That was
but the problem with that is that racism was emulated in school. So the comments and the racist comments that were, and I'm saying this as a brown man, those comments were I did hear those comments when I was at school. So that racism, even though he was the butt of the joke, the actual racist comments he made. So there were certain programs that were racist at that time, but a lot of them, like Mind Your Language, you're right, and it ain't half of them, were not particularly racist at all.
I disagree. I don't think it was racist. That program was challenging racism in society. So that's what the whole idea.
Oh, I think that was the intent.
Yeah,
that may be the intent. The manifestation, though, it was actually giving racist it was enabling racists to use certain racist terms outside of that, and that certainly happened at school.
Oh no, I remember using some of those terms because they became trendy terms to use, Sambo and things like that.
So we're having an admission from Nick that he was racist in the 70s.
My school was extremely racist.
Yeah.
And it was predominantly by my Asian friends. We had one, I won't name anybody, but we had one Asian friend whose neck was darker skin than the rest of him. And he was called Blackneck. And that was his name for 5 years, Blackneck.
Yeah.
We had another guy who had a birthmark on his face and he was called Scar. 5 years we called him Scar.
Yeah. I don't think that's racist. That's just...
Well, but
that's just plain and simple bullying.
Yeah, but these were the names we had for each other. And you couldn't have any of those nicknames now.
Yeah.
You'd be thrown out of school.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because that's bullying, Nick.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure it is bullying. It's not bullying when it comes from a friend. Men do, again, we lose this now because men are never with each other anymore now. There's always women there. So we don't act like men. Men have the worst nicknames for each other.
Yes.
And we will insult each other. We'll insult our best friends.
Yeah.
Because that's how we build bonds between each other.
Yes.
And we don't do that when we have women around. So we're losing those things.
Yeah. I think there is a fine line there. I mean, it's obviously our listeners have now found out you were the school bully, but that can be the headline of one of the clips. Was I the school bully? As I analysed.
I got you're somebody called me.
So it's a fine line, though, I think, and I was never bullied at school, but I'm sure I was certainly involved in peripheral bullying of certain characters, and you look back at certain people at school and you realise they were vulnerable and they were and it's a fine line when you say certain people have nicknames or whatever. It's a fine line between somebody having fun between friends and a member of that group actually being marginalised. I don't want to sound progressive or woke here. I'm not at all.
You are.
Yeah. No.
I get your point. Yeah.
I think there is a fine line, and it's the Blackneck guy you mentioned and the Scar guy. I'm sure they did laugh along with those things, but also I suspect that it could have been hurtful at times.
It would have been hurtful, and it would have toughened them up a bit.
Yeah.
So, bullying can go too far.
Yeah.
But that's what children do to each other to a certain extent, and it's also what men do to each other. Part of it is to make sure you conform.
I don't. It's interesting. Is I don't like to see, and I see it a lot in business, and it's kind of where senior people in business bully junior people. And my kind of motto in business is the people I'll have a go at are my peers. Yeah. If I'm going to have a fight in business, if I'm going to have a fight in a meeting, it's very, very easy to be hard on a subordinate. Of
course it is. You've got the power dynamics there.
Power dynamic. I think the correct way to behave is to if you're gonna treat somebody badly, treat a peer. And I was reflecting on this the other night because a word that is used a lot in films is whore. Have you heard this word? And it means it's referring to a prostitute basically. But I don't like to hear that word, and I don't like to hear it on television either. I don't know if you have a view on this word. We've never even discussed it before.
That was the word I used when I got banned off Twitter for a year.
Oh yeah, whore. Right, okay. Because I actually think it's pejorative, and I actually think it's quite
insulting.
I think it's insulting because it basically dehumanises women, even though it's almost like it almost makes them non-human to say, I watched it the other night in a programme with Bryan Cranston. It was a recent film made in 23 with Bryan Cranston, Lawrence Fishburne and Steve Carell. I can't remember what it's called now. And they were talking about their days in Vietnam, and they said, "Oh, remember those whores and such and such." And when I hear that, it actually it kind of the hairs on the back of my neck stand up because I think it's kind of it's dehumanising women. Those prostitutes were women who were doing whatever they were doing at the time to earn their money. But the word whore, by its very nature, makes them almost non-human. I would much prefer them to say remember those prostitutes or whatever. So that word, which is a kind of I'm not quite sure why that word works better for me than the word whore, but whore is almost dismissive, non-human, non-objective, basically.
Yeah.
And I think there are words that can be used that can be harmful, whether we, not to the extent of wokeism where if you use the wrong pronouns or whatever, but I think there are still certain things that people say that are not appropriate.
Of course there is, and those words change all the time.
Yeah.
And words can be hurtful. All you need to do is have an argument with your wife or your children to find out words can be hurtful.
Yes. Yeah.
And we use those words on purpose because we're trying to hurt that person we're arguing with.
Yeah.
And we tend to want to hurt the people we love because we've at that moment in time they're hurting us.
Yeah.
So we want to hurt them back.
Yeah.
So words can be hurtful.
Yeah. But not things like using their own pronouns. That's something that doesn't...
I would imagine some people will argue and say, yeah, that hurts me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I believe I'm a woman.
Yeah.
I act like a woman, I live my life like a woman, and every time you call me he, you just make me realise the journey I've been on to come here, and you put me back several months, and that's really painful for me. So I can understand it hurting people.
Yeah.
But for me, reality trumps your feelings there.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And on that note, I think we'll end this
Can
podcast.
I just confirm to listeners?
Yes.
I wasn't a bully at school. I don't condone bullying. There is a fine line between bullying and having a laugh with your friends and bonding and ripping into each other without it being bullying.
Yes.
So I don't condone bullying.
But can I also confirm to our listeners that Nick can edit that bit out of his thing if he wants to, so it doesn't really matter. This is not a live broadcast. I'm sure you'll take that little bit out there, Nick, and do it. Yeah, that was a joke when I said you were a bully at school. But Nick Buckley, potential and hopefully future Lord Mayor of Greater Manchester, thank you very much for our 8th podcast. And next week, I may be coming from abroad, but hopefully we can do it then. So
yeah, we're going international next week.
We're going international.
Lindsay reporter on the ground.
So yeah, we'll see how that goes. Thank you, Nick.
Cheers. If you like that video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell and comment. And if you like what I'm saying about running for Mayor of Greater Manchester, then stick around. Tell your family, tell your friends. The only way I'm going to have a chance of winning is a grassroots movement. So be part of that movement and hit that bell. Thanks.